Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Becky from RjAfMakes, and you'll be wanting to see the second video of the Ready for Anything bag. Hi, welcome back. So you guys will be wanting to carry on watching the video for the Ready for Anything bag. This is video 2. So if you haven't already watched video 1, then go back to my channel and click the back button, or there will be an icon that comes up here and round about now and that will take you, if you click on that icon, that will take you over to the first video. The first video is all about everything that you need for your sewing machine and working all the way up to finishing the outer bag. So in this video you're going to be learning how to make the lining of the bag and all the way over to finishing off the bag. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Drop down your comments in below or your questions below, or you can go over to our Facebook group which is RjAfMakes Sewing Pattern Support Group, and don't hesitate to ask. I want to see those makes, so please don't hesitate to link me into those through social media. All my social media platforms are listed in the description below. To buy this pattern you can go to RjAfMakes.com and you can buy this as a digital download or a paper pattern, and you can basically find everything you need in that pattern to be able to run through this even without the video if you don't want to use these videos. But I haven't wasted my time. There is more instructions in the video than there is in the actual pattern. So if you're new to my channel, please don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. And there is a notification bell, and click that notification bell, and that notification bell will ring every time you get when I upload a new video, and you will get notified. So without further ado, shall we get over to finishing off this bag? Right, so let's get making the bag lining and finishing off the bag. Right, so for the bag lining you should have the lining gusset piece, and I've interfaced that. You should also have two main body outer pieces, and I've interfaced both of those. And you should have two pocket and one zip pocket and one slip pocket lining pieces, and they're both interfaced. So we're going to go ahead and make the slip pocket first. That's the most easiest part. We're going to warm up into this bit. I'm just going to pop all this to one side. So we're going to use one of your main body pieces, and we're going to use one of your zip stroke slip pocket lining pieces. Okay, just popping the main body piece to one side. We are going to get the zip pocket lining or the slip pocket lining and fold those right sides together, matching up the two short sides. Just going to give that a light finger press. I'm just going to pop a clip on the two short sides. And pop two pins down here. Okay, so I'm going to draw approximately a 3-inch turning gap. So I'm just going to pop two lines. So this reminds me to stop and start on these two areas here. These two areas here. So I'm going to stitch 3/8 of an inch down, reversing my stitch at the start, down to the corner and pivot, and then sew up to this line here. And then I'm going to reverse my stitch here. I'm going to use a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and a stitch length of 2.4. Then I'm going to start off here. So I'm going to not going to sew this section here. I'm going to start off here, reverse my stitch up to the corner and back up to the top again, and making sure I reverse my stitch there as well. Okay, so I've sewn 1 centimetre away, or 3/8 of an inch away. I reverse my stitches at the start of each line and at the end of each line. So next thing I'm going to do is trim back this seam allowance. I'm not going to trim this area where that turning gap is. So I'm going to cut at an angle at the start. I'm going to go at an angle at the corner and then just carry on. And I'm just going to repeat the same for this side. And I'm going to finish off at an angle. So you're going to need a turning tool, and you're going to open up this turning gap and poke out to the right side. Remember to push out those corners. I'm just going to push out those corners now. Okay, so I'm going to go to my iron and give this a good press. So the bit at the bottom where the turning gap is, I'm going to fold those 2 raw edges up inside and press that as well. And I'm just going to go back to my sewing machine and top stitch where that fold is along the top here, 1/8 of an inch away, using a stitch length number 3 on my machine, after I've given this a really good press. Okay, so I gave this a really good press and I top stitched along that folded edge. There is my turning gap at the bottom still. Now we're going to fold this in half and give this a really good finger press on that fold. I'm just going to pop a pin in where that top of the fold is because my fabric's quite busy. Okay, that's just for my reference. So we're going to get the main body piece and fold that in half. And I'm going to give that a good finger press, but I'm just going to go one step further, and at the bottom I'm going to cut into that seam allowance. That's for when we sew the bag lining together. Now it is really busy, my fabric, so I really am going to have to pop a pin in that section there, just so I know that's where the fold is. Okay, so we're going to measure 1.5 inches down. I'm using the number 6 on my quilter's rule as my centre point. And I'm just going to pop the folded edge which we've top stitched there. And I'm making sure the centre is on the number 6 and the centre goes down to the bottom. I'm just going to pin across these 2 short edges here of the slip pocket and across the bottom. I'm now going to remove these 2 pins at the top here. I'm going to go to my sewing machine and top stitch using the stitch length 3 or 3.5 down this side here and this side and across the base. So I'm just going to start here, reverse my stitch, go down, pivot, keeping my needle down across to here, pivot again and go back up and reverse my stitch. And I'm using a stitch length 3.5, and I'm not going to sew the top section. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that and top stitched down here, across here and up here, and I've left the gap at the top. Now you can go one step further if you want to. I'm not going to because I have a large mobile phone. But if you ever wanted to store your mobile phone and it's a small mobile phone, you can actually divide this pocket up in half and then do some more stitches for your pens. So it's totally up to you. So you can divide this pocket up however you want, but this is the time you need to divide this pocket up. So we're going to pop this to one side. Now the next part of the video I'm not going to show because we've already gone through it, but it's actually doing the inside zip pocket. So you're going to need the other main outer body piece. You're going to need your zip, and I'm using the number 3 zip, so I'll explain the difference about the number 3 zip. You're going to need your last remaining zip pocket piece. Okay, so earlier on in the video, in the first video, I installed a zip pocket on the main front outer body, and that was a number 5 zip. Now we're using the number 3 zip for the inside. So the letterbox hole on the previous video was 5/8 or 4/8. So that's how much you measure down. This time we're only going to do 3/8 of an inch on this zip. So revert back to the start of the pattern on making the zip pocket. Follow the same instructions, but this time there'll be no foam to cut away, so you will need to miss out that part of the step. And like I say, you are going to do a 3/8 of an inch measuring down for that zip pocket letterbox, and then you're going to close up the pocket completely like normal. So I'm going to do it on camera, but it's going to be a speed motion going. Okay, so we've got a number 3 zip, and we're going to do the measurements for the number 3, and then I'm going to speed back up the film because it's exactly the same process as before. So from the top of the lining pocket, like before, measure down. Okay, and we are going to do still a 7-inch line. So that's 3.5 inches from one side, and then 3.5 inches on the other side. Okay, but this time I'm going to measure down 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and then draw that second line. One thing you will notice is the actual letterbox hole. The letterbox hole is a lot smaller than the previous letterbox holes. Now just basically treat it as you are making the outer zip pocket again, but not cutting away the foam. So keep an eye on the video and you'll notice me not cut away any foam. I'll just basically pass the pocket through. So I'm just going to speed up the video now so you guys can actually physically see everything and without me talking through it once again. That's actually done. Pretty simple, same as instructions as before. Make sure you close up your pocket, and if your zip was longer like mine, just trim it off to where I trimmed mine off. So now we're going to make the bag lining. So for this you'll need this pocket, this main body part that you need. I'm just going to pop my zip in the centre again just to keep it out of the way. You're going to need your slip pocket part, and you're going to need your gusset. So that's your lining gusset, which is this part. Okay, so grabbing your lining gusset, you're going to bring these two short sides together and find the centre top and the centre bottom of the two long edges. So I'm just going to snip into that. I'm just going to do a little triangle. I'm going to snip into the seam allowance. So I've got two little notches, like so. Okay, so I know I like my zip pockets inside on the part of the bag that's closest to the body, so I'm going to deal with this one at the next part of this lining. So I'm going to pop that to one side. I'm going to work with the lining. So this is going to be on the front side of the bag. So you've got your notch where you clipped into to find the centre bottom of this. We're going to match up the centre bottom to one of those notches on the side, and we're going to pop those right sides together. This time I use pins, so I'm just going to pop some pins in, matching up the edges. Okay, I'm just going to flip this around so it's easier for me to work. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is get this side of this part of the lining up to this part of the panel and pin that into place. I'm going to do the repeat for this side as well, and this side, matching up the raw edges and making sure that you are doing right side to right side. So just like you did with when putting the bag together, you're going to pin up to those corners. So I'm going to pin to around about that corner there, and same down the side. Okay, so just like we did on the outer gusset, we're going to just have to snip into the seam allowance of this gusset, but only marginally, just within the seam allowance. Okay, and then I'm just going to pin that into place. And then I'm just going to repeat the same on this side as well. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is go to your sewing machine and stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way around, making sure you reverse your stitch, and I'm going to use a 2.4 stitch length. Okay, I've stitched all the way around, so I'm just going to go one step and trim back this. I'm trimming it back by half. Okay, so we're going to repeat the same process, but this time we need to leave a turning gap. So we're going to pop this right side facing down, match up the bottom notches, and making sure that there is the edges match up. Then we're going to pop this main body part at the top to this top of the gusset. And I'm going to do the same with this one. So before we go any further, I'm just going to lie my gusset down, so I'm working on the wrong side of the gusset, and I'm going to draw in my turning gap. So I like to leave quite a large turning gap on my bags, then it's easier for the person, whoever's making it, to birth the bag. So I'm going to approximately put a mark there and a mark there. So that's basically where the two corners are, just after the two corners start. It's approximately 6.5 inches wide. So I'm going to pin down to that first corner. I'm going to pop a pin where that first mark is. Like so. I'm just going to snip into that seam allowance on that gusset. And just pop some clips in. Okay, and repeat the same process on here. So I'm just going to pop a pin where that mark is. And pin down these two sides, this side here. And snip into that gusset lining piece, just in the seam allowance. And pin that. So I'm just going to remove those two centre pins, because knowing me, I will forget that I have to stop and start at these two parts and carry on sewing. So you're going to sew from the top here. So I'm going to sew from this side, and I'm going to sew from here, reverse my stitch, and I'm going to use a stitch length 2.4 and a seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch. So all the way around to that first mark, and reverse my stitch. So I'm reversing my stitches here and here. Then I'm going to repeat the same process. So from this mark here, all the way around to there, doing exactly the same, reverse my stitch using the stitch length 2.4 and 3/8 of an inch. Okay, I've sewn that and I've left that turning gap there. I'm just going to trim back the seam allowance, but I'm going to taper off at these sections here. So I'm trimming it back by half. Make sure you don't cut into your lining or your sewn line. And there is your bag lining finished. Right, so now you should have your bag lining and your bag. And we're going to pop the bag lining over the outer bag. So I've opened up the flap of the outer bag. And I'm just going to pop this inside here. So this turning gap here is going to be on the back where the flap is of my bag. And we're just going to pop that inside. So it's right side to right side. Don't worry, because it's foam, it will bounce back. So the first thing we're going to do is get these tabs on the side and push them down as far as we can push them down. I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay. So you're going to need quite a lot of wonder clips, quilting clips for this. So where your lining side seams are should match up to your actual main bag side seams, and we're just going to clip. I always like to start off on those joins there. So if you've been spot on with your sewing, your side seam should match up to that side seam, and it should be like that for all four of them. Same again with this one. Okay, and then I just like to pop a clip in the centre there as well on both of them. Okay, and then I'm just going to clip all the way around here, matching up the raw edges. Okay, so if you've got a sleeve arm on your sewing machine, take off the compartment and have it as a cylinder, and then sew from this side, and then you just have to keep rolling the bag. You will have to keep pushing down the bag because the foam could get in the way. I personally only have a flatbed, so I have to sew from the inside and roll my bag this way. You'll see me doing this on the camera footage from the sewing machine now. Don't get confused. If you've got a cylinder arm and your cylinder arm has quite a large gap at the bottom, do it by putting the cylinder arm inside and sewing from this side. so that's all sewn all the way around, 3/8 of an inch. And we're just going to trim back this seam allowance. You're probably getting the gist of it. You trim back all your seam allowances as you go along it on your main outer bag and your main lining of the bag, because it just reduces the bulk when you have to sew in those particular areas. And you should do that for most bag patterns anyway. It will save you all the stress and all the aggro for when you have to sew all that together. So I'm just trimming that back by half. Okay, so we left a nice turning gap, so we're going to get our hand inside and slowly ease the bag out. You're not going to be forceful because you don't want to rip that. It will come out if you've left a nice size turning gap. So the first off is I like to just get my hand up into that turning gap and poke out those corners of the outer bag. Okay, then I get the whole lining out and just get my fingers up into those corners and really get those corners out. I'm going to close up that zip pocket now. Just make sure the lining is the right way. And then I'm going to literally grab that bit there and grab that bit there and open up the bag and pop that inside. Okay, so we're going to go to the iron now and give this a really good press. What the plan is, you don't really want to see this lining when you press it. Be careful if you've used PU on your bag. We just don't want that to get burnt. And you're going to really press so the lining is not seen from the outside. Now I find using a tailor's ham or some rolled up towel to go inside and press that so the bag doesn't lose its shape. Okay, so I've pressed that. So if you've got a cylinder arm on your sewing machine, you will sew from this side and you'll sew a 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch depending on what your confidence is. And you're going to sew 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch away from this edge here, and you can use your sleeve arm to go inside. However, I haven't got a sleeve arm, I have to use the flatbed, so my problem is I can't sew from that side. I have to turn my bag so it's the lining facing out. You have to really push out the corners. Okay. And I have to sew from this side all the way around. So I still have a problem with that. So what I also have to do is clip the lining. So clip around the edge, apart from where the flap side is. Because what happens is when I twist the bag around, the lining does have a tendency to move around. So I'm just going to clip all the way around. What I'm doing is pulling it down to make sure the lining can't be seen that much from the right side of the bag, the outer side of the bag. Okay, so whichever way you're sewing this, my trick is to start off at one of the side seams and start your back of your bag first. So that's the flap side. And then carry on sewing all the way around. So I'm a confident sewer, so I'm going to try and aim for 1/8 of an inch away. But like I say, if you're not a confident sewer, sew 1/4 of an inch away all the way around. You're going to use a stitch length, because of the foam, I would say a stitch length 4. And definitely make sure your walking foot is on your machine and you've definitely got one of the larger needles in. That's a 90/14 or 116 needle. And like I say, just go really slow, do inch by inch, and take those clips out if you've had to put clips in as well. As you can see, I've sewn all the way around. Reverse my stitches. I've just got a bit of a bird's nest from back stitching, so I'm just going to trim that back on both front and back. Okay. Now I personally have to turn mine back the right way facing out. I'm going to give this one last look over before I close it up, because if you've got any problems, this is the point where you can try and fix it. So no, mine's quite fine. So I'm going to get the lining out, and we need to close up this turning gap. So because there is a bit of bulk and you don't want a baggy lining, I'm going to tell you a bit about what I tend to do. In the pattern, I just tell you to tuck it under the 3/8 of an inch and close up that lining. I actually like to take a bit more off, so I'm actually going to tuck it up like 3/4 of an inch on either side. So I'm going to take about that much. Give that a good finger press. And do the same with this bit on this side as well. So I'm taking it up at least 3/4 of an inch. And then going to clip these together. Now it's totally up to you. You can hand sew this. For time, I'm just going to machine sew it. You can, if you're hand sewing it, you can do a ladder stitch or whip stitch. It's totally up to you. It's a more professional finish, but I'm just going to machine sew it for now. So I'm going to go to my machine and stitch just a bit off where that turning gap starts. So I'm going to start around about here, sew across, and I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and I'm just going to carry on just past that actual turning gap and finish around about here. I'm going to reverse my stitches at the start and at the end. Okay, I've sewn those, sewn that closed. I'm just going to trim off any loose pieces of thread and pop that into the lining, back into the bag. Close up any zips that could possibly be open. And just make sure that lining is down inside. And that's your outer bag finished. That's coming quite nice together. Now I do actually go a bit further. I actually stuff this out with a towel and ever so lightly, making sure my iron doesn't touch any PU parts, give this a really good press, just to add that body. I also overnight, while it's overnight setting into place, I actually stuff it out with towels and let it form its proper shape overnight as well. So I'm just going to put this to one side. We're going to work on the crossbody strap and we're going to finish the bag. How good is this? We're coming to the end of the bag, so we're going to make the strap. Some people could say this is boring. So in the pattern, as it's a dual layered strap, so it's got two finishes, I've taken a bit of the boringness away from it. So you'll need your overlay strap part and your underlay strap part. The reason why I've done the fabric underlay for mine is for the fact that if I do use this bag in the summer and I'm wearing a vest top when I'm out and about, the bag strap will not rub as much on my skin, and I just like the contrast from the keeping the actual main fabric the same as on the strap as well. So my fabric wasn't long enough, so I've cut two pieces, so we need to make this one complete long strip. So if you find that this as well isn't one long strip, you can do exactly the same process as what I'm going to do with these two on both of these. So we're going to treat this like bias binding, and we want to reduce the bulk when we come to folding it all together and that. So I'm going to lay one piece right side facing up horizontally, and I'm going to get the other piece right side facing down, but I'm going to do this vertically, and I'm just going to overlap it at the end and pin or clip. I'm just going to pop a clip on, and then I'm going to sew from this corner here all the way down to this corner. So I'm going to go at a diagonal line. I'm going to draw that on, so I know that I've got to definitely sew on that line. There you go. So that drawn line there is going to be my sew line. So I'm going to start from here, reverse my stitch, sew all the way down and reverse my stitch here. I'm going to use the stitch length 2.4 on my sewing machine. So I've sewn that part there. We need to just trim back some parts of this so that it's not there for when we have to press it open. So I'm just going to trim that back to the width of the actual binding, of the actual strap. Sorry, I keep thinking I'm making bias binding here. And then I'm just going to trim it 1/4 inch away from the sewn line, like so. I'm going to open that out, go to my iron and press this seam open, like so. And then while I'm at the ironing station, I'm going to fold these two long edges into the centre, and I'm going to do that for the whole strip. Okay, so I've given that a good press. So I've pressed the join open, and then I press the two long sides into the centre, and I've now got one nice neat strip here. Just going to pop this to one side, and we're going to get the overlay. So if you've had to, and you're using PU, and if you've had to cut two strips, you will have a join, but you can't press it. So my advice is, where the seams need to be open, just pop some tape, some quilter's tape underneath, and press that seam open. So we need to find the centre of this. So being that it's 2 inches, we need to find the centre, which is 1 inch, and we need to draw one long line. And you're going to keep doing that all the way down. And as you guessed it, we're going to use quilter's tape, and we're going to run quilter's tape all the way along top and bottom of that line. So. Okay, so I've run quilter's tape top and bottom. I'm just going to peel off the bottom one first and work on this side. You may need your quilter's clips. Now if you've used woven fabric, you won't need to do this line in the centre and run quilter's tape. You can just go to your iron and press it the exactly same way as what we have on this one here. But obviously you can't use an iron on PU leather on the right side. You can on the back, but not on the right side. So I'm just going to stick this into place up to that centre line. You might need to add clips every so often if it's not sticking well. Then you're going to flip this over and repeat that same process again on this side. Okay, I've got that done. I'm just going to get this piece here, put that up there, and on the wrong side where the two pieces join together, so on this side here where that gap is, I'm going to run quilter's tape along the centre. Okay, so we're going to grab this here and I'm going to peel off the backing of this and I'm going to start sticking around about 3 inches in, approximately, and you're going to stick it so it's wrong side to wrong side, and we're going to stick it right into the centre, so you should have an overlap from the PU side underneath. Peeling off that backing with my hand underneath and sticking that into place. And really pushing it down. Now if it's coming undone here, just go back and just press it down. Okay, so I'm going to start round about 3 inches away from this edge of this one here, and I'm going to trim off any of the leftover underlay, which is the fabric one. There you go. This is just going to help you with the bulky part on the final steps. Okay, so we're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch from the top, so that's the PU side, and I'm going to stitch in just under 1/4 of an inch on both sides. I'm going to use a stitch length number 4 on my sewing machine. I'm going to make sure I definitely got a polyester thread in my machine, and I'm going to use a walking foot. We're sewing just under 1/4 of an inch on each side. What will happen is it will catch this fabric part here underneath, so it means that we don't have to sew a 2 more lines on top. So I'm just going to go to my sewing machine and give those a sew. So that was easy. I've sewn it, so you've got a nice even strap on both sides. So the next thing we're going to do is get our components. First of all, we're going to start off with our strap slider. So this is my top side. I'm going to feed. Now if you've noticed on your sliders that there is a right side and a wrong side, okay, so that, as you can see, is slightly rough, that edge there. So we're going to feed from the right side of the strap under, from the bottom inside, let's say. Then we're going to feed the right side of the strap over the right side of the actual buckle. And I'm going to feed that over. Now I'm just going to trim this back a bit to make it more even and nice, like so. I'm going to feed this on approximately about 3.5 inches. I'm going to fold this over by about 3/4 of an inch and then fold that over again onto the strap. Now I personally like to go to the sewing machine and sew across there at least, and then I will put in a rivet as well, but I'm going to sew across to see the clips just broke, always the way. So I am going to sew, so it's extra precaution. I just don't always trust rivets. They're there for decoration, they're not there to hold things into place. So I'm just going to sew across there. Now I've just put my presser foot down and it's definitely going at an angle, so I know full well my stitches won't make full stitches. So I'm going to get my bulky seam made and pop this in the back, and then I'm just going to sew forward a few stitches, and I'm doing it really slow because there is quite a large bulk there. Then I'm going to reverse my stitch, but I'm keeping my hand on the back here, and I've reversed 3 stitches back, and then I'm just going to sew forward and I'm going to reverse stitch back as well, but I'm keeping my bulky seam made there because I'm going to reverse back 3 stitches, and I know full well that if I don't put something at the back, the actual presser foot will come off at an angle. I'm just going to sew forward. Right, so I've just sewn that, and I'm just going to trim off any loose pieces of thread. Okay, so like I say, I'm just going to go my rivet press, and I'm going to pop a hole in. And add a rivet. Okay, that's the first side done. Let's get rid of some of that bits. Okay, so we're going to work from this end now. I'm going to trim that back a bit because to get rid of any uneven edges. I'm going to get the first swirl clasp. Now the hook part needs to go on the outer side, like so. And I'm going to feed that on. Then I'm going to keep hold of this part of the strap and feed that in there through the buckle. So I've gone underneath. Then I'm going to feed that over that bar in the centre and pull that through. I'm just going to feed a bit more. So you should have the start of your strap, like so. Then I'm just going to do this buckle, this swirl clasp. So this swirl clasp, you need the hook standing upright, and you're going to feed this into the oval shape. So it should be on this side. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to fold this over by 3/4 of an inch again, and then roll that over. And like before on my sewing machine, I'm going to pop the clip this side. Like before on my sewing machine, I'm just going to sew over this area here so it holds all these pieces together. I will have to put my bulky seam aid in as well. Okay, so that's been sewn. I'm once again just going to trim off any loose pieces of thread. And then I'm just going to pop a hole in for my last rivet. Okay, so you got one finished crossbody strap. There's nothing stopping you now finishing it off your bag and clipping it into place like so. And there you have it, one finished bag. Wow, that was 2 lengthy videos, but you've done it, you've finished that bag. So well done, and yeah, and any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So if you're new to my channel, please give me a thumbs up and comment down below. Let me know what you want to learn from me. There is loads of videos on this channel, and why not click subscribe and the notification bell. So once again, thank you ever so much for joining me on my channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye! Right, tongue twister time. Gotta be quick because the battery's running out. Okay, so go, 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 go!